regardless of how much, any time is too much, especially if somebody's losing their life. So, with that said, the thing that we must understand the most is prepare them for survival in a sense of, don't say, watch out for the cops. Just prepare how to act regardless of how the cop acts. But in the case of being arrested, just if you will, please come up.
Yeah, I'll just start off by saying I've met a few of you before. It's nice to be here with you guys. I'm Jessica Stern. I now have a practice where I defend people charged with all levels of crime and also immigration offenses. I've been practicing for 6 years, and the first three-ish, a little bit over 3 years, I was a public defender in Fulton County. So I mean, I've seen it all. I mean, I've handled serious murder cases, rape cases, child molestations, you name it. What I will say, the difference in the conversation that we're having today from the experiences I saw there was that, you know, the people I was representing were indigent. You know, they don't have the resources to, you know, necessarily call a father who luckily has, you know, the experiences that you may have had, or, you know, have a background that might be able to kind of have the accountability or credibility to call the police and just kind of talk your way through it. You know, it's a very vulnerable group of folks that we also have to think about, not necessarily just, you know, the way that the experiences that we have. You know, if we're not all standing up for everybody's rights, then, you know, they're not going to be upheld. So just, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and talk at y'all, but these are just a few tips that we've heard before. You know, we've heard things on TV, you know, the fact that we have the right to remain silent, yet just you'd be surprised how many people don't. You know, they get pulled over and they're nervous and they just start talking and they talk themselves into trouble. I mean, they might not even been in trouble, but they talk themselves into trouble. Just the one point that everything on here is right, except for your Miranda rights. I think the number one thing I probably hear when people call me and they want to talk about whether there's something to challenge about an unlawful stop or unlawful arrest is, they didn't read me my rights. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, really it's not about just being in custody, but it's anytime you're being questioned by the police. So if you're stopped by the police, let's say your license is suspended, maybe you didn't know it's suspended, they're gonna arrest you, you're gonna go to jail, but they're not interrogating you. They're not asking you anything that can lead up to evidence in your case. But for instance, if you're arrested because there's probable cause that maybe you were involved in a robbery, well, you're gonna get arrested, and then they're probably gonna start talking to you in the car while you're in the back. Or, you know, they might bring you to the police station and start questioning you in a more formal way. Anytime that you're in custody, in the legal form of custody, which is its own little thing that's difficult to find sometimes, that's when they technically have to read you your Miranda rights and tell you you have the right to remain silent and all the things that you say will be used against you in the court of law. If they don't read you those Miranda rights and you do give a statement while you're in custody, then that's something that can be later be suppressed in court because it was unlawfully obtained. Similar to, you know, if for instance, in number 2, right to refuse consent, if you're stopped by the police in the traffic stop, and just like kind of what I posed to Egypt for a minute, you know, if the cops just kind of, you're innocently stopped by the police, there's no probable cause, they don't smell marijuana, they don't see anything in plain sight, so they have no reason to stop you, or legal basis to search you, then at that point they can still say, I'm just kind of bored right now, can I, you know, do I have consent to search your car? People kind of feel like they have to say yes, you know, or also people feel like, well, if I don't have anything in my car, why don't I just say yes? But, you know, it's time that's out of your day that you're sitting there consenting to something that just isn't necessary, in my opinion. But also sometimes you don't know who maybe borrowed your car and something might be in it that you didn't even realize was there. You know, people think that might be an excuse that people use at some point, but that can be the case. And so at that point, you can say, no, I don't consent. A lot of times, though, police will still search. And if there's a way to prove that you didn't give consent and there still was a search, then we can prove that it's an unlawful stop, and anything that's found can be suppressed. That's why now we're talking about police that, you know, now police departments are discussing having cameras so that we can see what's happening rather than it just being a he said, she said, because the power dynamic, unfortunately, is always, the judge is always going to err on the side of what the judge says. Even if you are the most credible witness, they're always going to believe the cop unless there's something in their personnel file that shows that they've unlawfully done something. And that's the problem, is having something actually proven that the officer's done something unlawful is the trouble a lot of times. So, you know, a lot of it is being able to prove it. If you have a camera, you know, Monsanto wanted to talk about whether or not you can legally record a police officer. Every single state law is different, but in Georgia, as long as you are one of the parties that is in the conversation, you have the right to record it. So if, let's say you're on the phone with someone, and you can record the person on the other line because you're one of the involved parties, but I can't, you know, listen in on a conversation Montoya is having with somebody and recording, you know, third-party conversation. So same thing with an officer. If you're personally involved in something, you can record it. You can also record what's going on around you as well. But the officer is going to try to tell you to turn it off, and then may try to arrest you for obstructing the investigation.
I do have a question.
Sure.
The case just recently where the child was in the back recording the interaction with the cop and the family, where they roughed him up pretty badly for like 13 minutes or so, whatever the case was. But the child was in the back recording. Does that fall in the room? Because he wasn't in the conversation. The police officer was talking to the parents. How does that play in?
Right. So actually, I'm sorry. I should have clarified. That's a phone conversation. So if the person can't see you and you're secretly recording, and they can't see that you're recording, and so it's just a
it needs to be visible.
Right. So you need to be in public view, and if they can see you recording, then that's okay. But you can't have like private surveillance.
Okay.
Question.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I mean, this is pretty straightforward, but these are basic things that I think people end up getting confused about and end up getting arrested when they maybe didn't need to.
Could you expound on citizen arrest?
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Is there any strength to that? No, is that still valid?
I've actually represented people who have gotten arrested for trying to do a citizen's arrest. I mean, it depends. It depends how far the person goes with it. I mean, I think it's always a sticky area. I think we need to let law enforcement do what they do, because maybe back in the day when the community all, kind of looked out for each other, it would have been fine. But now, if you stop a kid after he's just about to try to break into your car and you have your hand on him, and then he says, he grabbed me and he hit me, my client got arrested for battery for that when he was just trying to stop the kid from breaking into his car. So it's kind of just like this thing that's said. It's not really a formal, like,
okay, well, couldn't that not play into why a lot of people today feel like they don't have any power, but police have all the power?
They do.
Well, I'm saying though, when you're talking about your rights here, generally you feel you don't have your rights and you feel like you're powerless because you don't know what your rights are. No, now there's situations that I know of personally that, an officer pulls you over and, they're being belligerent or whatever. You don't even have to open your door. You can drop your window and say, I'll sit here until you call a supervisor to the scene. Now you do have that right.
Yeah, that's not a citizen's arrest.
No, I'm not saying that's a citizen's arrest, but I'm saying if I don't know that and I feel that the officer has all the power, well, I don't have to come out of my car.
Right, but
I can demand that officer call his supervisor to the scene, and they have to do it.
No.
Yes,
No,
they don't have to do anything.
No.
They don't have to do anything.
No,
What's gonna
that's
happen
good
is
information.
you'll get arrested for obstruction
You don't have to
of
do it.
justice. No, you will get
You're talking
arrested
to a
for
lawyer, bro.
obstruction of justice.
Okay, what I'm saying to you is, we're saying in all situations, but it does work.
It can work.
Yes, it can work.
It also cannot work too.
Right, but on the most part, it's if the officer's saying roll down your window,
right,
then you roll down your window, and then the next step is step out the car, and you say,
why do you have to step out of the car?
Well, why do I have to sign the ticket that they
No, I'm
that they
saying,
give
why
me
do you
when I
have to step out of the car?
And
That's
you
my
get arrested
question.
if you don't sign the speeding ticket.
No, I'm asking you, why do you have to step out of the car? Based on what?
Because otherwise I'm going to be sitting in the car, the officer's going to keep telling me to get out the car.
And
it's going to end up being a power struggle, and he's going to either physically remove me from the car.
How is he going to remove you?
I'll tell you how. Let me.
Like they did old boy.
Yes.
Can I help you with this one?
Hey, listen up. We gotta address this. But the reason that we have to listen, I know what you're saying.
One person
I'm
that
begging you
experiences
to
not
allow me to
everybody
address
experience.
But I'm begging
What I'm saying, I have had situations like
Okay,
this
that's
happen.
what I want you. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. What I want you to understand.
So one can't say it cannot happen.
Nobody's ever said that. Nobody's never. She didn't say. No, she didn't. She said it
He
can't
said
happen.
he's going to pull you out of the car. No, he's not.
He's just gonna wait on
His
you?
supervisor to get there.
Brother.
And then what's the supervisor?
Brother, please. This information right here, look, brother, what I want you to understand is, having done it myself, what you understand what is that?
I understand.
What am I
You're
saying?
saying, what keeps happening, and I saw it happen a lot here tonight, one will take their experience and say that's valid for all parties.
But I represented like 2,000 people, so these are my experiences.
This is like this brother here. It's just like this brother here. Why do you keep going back and forth with the older gentleman? Because his point of view versus your point
Sir, I thought
of view.
he was misunderstanding what. I thought he was misunderstanding. Look, because I don't want nobody to put words in my mouth. I'll tell you what I'm saying. Here, I think to answer this young lady's question, ma'am, if your kid was my son, the first thing I will sit my son down and do is go over these cases. And I will make sure he understands your life is whose responsibility? First and foremost, yours. And son, you can do this or you can do that, but at the end of the day, who's gonna benefit or suffer from the consequences? Then I will sit down and do an after action review. You know what that is right there, sir, after action review? We go on missions, we come back whether successful or not. We go over what happened. Everybody has to go around the room, 3 positive and 3 negatives, all right? Then I will put them leading from the front. I will put my son around other positive, like-minded men, and we will tell our story. Some men here, I will have my son around, and then I will show him the proper legal expectations. Finally, I will make him back brief me as to him understanding clearly and concisely my leadership and my teaching. And if he ain't on point, he ain't driving.
Good stuff. I want to address this.
Yeah,
I have to address this because I don't. One thing I don't want misinformation out there, and I need you to understand that I absolutely understand that that's been your experience. I've actually done the same thing before, and so what I do want to clarify, and I need you to understand this, and I've had this from not just from a lawyer, but from a policeman, what they would do in that situation. Why she's telling you they could remove you? Because what I want you to understand is, here's how they can remove you, just so you understand. Okay. So what happens is, I've been told that information. I don't want our community to hear on film that is okay because it will not always work, and here's why. Here's why, from a police officer. Yeah, I get it. But here it is. You are also saying that they have to go do that. I want you to understand what the policeman can easily do in that moment, especially before they get these cameras. Maybe this changes after the cameras. But before the cameras, the policeman says, all he has to do is figure out what reason that he wants to arrest you. Because at the end of the day, he's not the judge. All his job is to arrest you. Right, so check it out. What he can decide, when he says, you're saying, is this an order or a request? A request is not an order. But if he says, I am ordering you out of the car, if he decides that he's ordering you out of the car, he can literally say, obstruction of justice. Call, here it is. Call the cop. This is why this happened to people.
Right.
Call them, and it just happened on film. It's on video. It just happened recently. Okay. So you asking for the supervisor, and they're dragging you out, and they say, here's the supervisor, because you know. And I'm gonna say this is a reality of what happens with it. This is a reality.
So I live in Douglas County, so you can't talk to me about Cobb.
I'm not so here you go. Please, I just don't want that. Don't think that they will guarantee bring a supervisor. They can easily happen.
But can you imagine the same situation?
So I don't want that information out when they're not going to necessarily always bring a supervisor. Understand to ask for it, or understand if they give you an order.
Nobody can predict always.
I'm not using the word always. I just don't want that information. Because people really, I hear it all the time. Just ask for a supervisor and a supervisor will come. Do not teach your children that. Please, I'm begging you not to teach your